Study Borgia. If you truly wish to understand the mechanics of power, you must look at him. He is not a figure from a storybook. He is not a legend clouded by time and myth. He is a real case. He is a working model that shows how an ambitious person can acquire power, how they can wield it to shape the world around them, and, just as importantly, how that same power can be lost. You should learn from his methods, for they are timeless. You should also learn from his mistakes, for they are just as instructive. This is not a judgment. It is an observation. This essay will not be a retelling of his life story, filled with dates and names that you will soon forget. Such details are the concern of historians. Our focus is different. The first principle he followed was to always act decisively. He did not linger in doubt. He did not allow his enemies the comfort of time to plan and prepare. When he saw an opportunity, he moved with shocking, disorienting speed. When he saw a threat, he moved with shocking, disorienting speed. His plans were executed quickly, often before news of his intentions began to spread. This rapid action created an aura of surprise. Surprise is a powerful weapon. It shatters the confidence of opponents. It disrupts their carefully laid plans. It replaces their resolve with a paralyzing sense of fear. Acting with decision means making clear choices. It means saying yes. It means saying no. Indecision confuses followers. Indecision emboldens opponents. A firm choice shows everyone where they stand. Followers get clear direction. Opponents must react to the leader's move. The decisive leader seizes control of the timeline. They dictate the pace and force others to keep up. This principle appears in modern power structures every day. A decisive CEO in a market crisis can save a company from ruin. A hesitant CEO can watch it collapse. A swift government response to a natural disaster can prevent catastrophe. A swift response to a security threat can stop escalation. But decisiveness needs sound judgment. Acting quickly is not the same as acting correctly. Rapid, poor decisions can create powerful enemies and lead to ruin, just like inaction. Decisiveness is a tool guided by clear, rational purpose. He knew a moment once lost can never be regained. An enemy given a day to think is a day to conspire. An ally left waiting might seek a more reliable partner. His quickness was a calculated strategy. It kept his forces motivated. It kept his enemies off balance. He made others always respond to him. That constant pressure wore down the will of those who might have stood against him. The second principle was to remove threats completely. He did not believe in half measures. He understood that a wounded enemy is often more dangerous than a healthy one, for they are driven by a desire for revenge. When he identified a true threat to his power, he did not simply defeat them on the field or force them into a temporary retreat. He worked to ensure that the threat was neutralized permanently. He aimed to make future resistance impossible, or so costly that no rational person would dare to attempt it. This was a brutal but logical extension of his goal, to create a stable and secure state under his control. Complete removal does not always mean physical violence, though that was one of the tools he used. It can mean dismantling an enemy's power base. It can mean stripping them of their wealth, their titles, their political influence. It means closing legal loopholes and closing social loopholes they might use to regain footing. It is about reshaping the system so a rival cannot challenge you again. He would take over their lands, install his own loyal administrators, and redirect their sources of income into his own treasury. In the modern world, leaders and organizations use a similar logic, though often in less direct ways. A dominant company might acquire a smaller rival to gain its technology and to eliminate a competitor from the marketplace entirely. A political party might rewrite electoral laws or gerrymander districts to prevent opponents from winning. They secure power by changing the rules of the game. They build institutional barriers that limit rivals from regrouping. The goal is the same: make the threat disappear for good, but total removal is not without its costs. It can be incredibly effective in the short term. However, it can also breed deep and lasting resentment. Actions born of fear and ruthlessness create a powerful narrative against you. While fear can certainly keep people in line, it is a poor foundation for long-term loyalty. A state built only on eliminating rivals can become brittle. It lacks flexibility and goodwill to weather unexpected storms. A population that obeys only because it is afraid is a population waiting for the first sign of weakness. If you're interested in understanding how power actually works, not in theory but in practice, this channel is for you. Here we analyze power through history, psychology, and real systems. If that's something you want to explore, you can subscribe and stay with us. His third principle was to create absolute clarity about consequences. He made the relationship between cause and effect terrifyingly simple. Everyone under his rule, from the lowest peasant to the most powerful captain, knew exactly what would happen if they supported him, knew exactly what would happen if they betrayed him. This certainty removed the dangerous space of ambiguity where rebellion and conspiracy tend to grow. When consequences are clear, behavior becomes predictable. For a ruler seeking to establish order in a chaotic world, predictability is one of the most valuable assets imaginable. When a leader's rules are vague or inconsistently enforced, it creates an environment of uncertainty. People begin to test the boundaries. Rumors spread, factions form in the shadows. A leader who is clear and unwavering in their response to loyalty and in their response to disloyalty removes that gray area. When a reward for service is guaranteed, people are motivated to serve. When a punishment for treason is swift and certain, people are discouraged from committing it. Others see the direct link between an action and its outcome, and they learn the rules of the system very quickly. This clarity reduces unrest and simplifies the act of governance. In modern terms, this principle is the foundation of any stable system of law or management. It is found in legal codes that specify clear penalties for specific crimes. It is present in business contracts that outline the consequences for a breach of terms. It is embodied in a corporate culture where the rules for promotion and termination are transparent and applied to everyone equally. The objective is always to remove doubt. Doubt allows people to hope they can get away with something. Certainty forces them to make a rational choice based on a clear understanding of the potential outcomes. These three principles did not exist in isolation. They worked together as a single, powerful system. His decisiveness allowed him to act before his enemies could. His strategy of complete removal ensured that once defeated, they posed no future danger. His clear system of consequences kept his subjects and allies in line through a mixture of incentive and fear. The combination of these ideas created a formidable hold on his territory and the people within it. It was a machine designed for the rapid acquisition and consolidation of power in a world where only the strongest and most cunning could survive. The anatomy of a system. By weaving these three principles together, he created more than just a series of victories. He built a system. It was a system designed to expand his power and protect it from internal and external threats. His decisive action was the engine, driving the entire apparatus forward with relentless momentum. The complete removal of threats was the shield, deflecting and neutralizing any force that might halt that momentum. And the clarity of consequences was the internal wiring, ensuring that every component of the state, his generals, functioned according to his design, and his tax collectors. This was not random violence or simple ambition. It was a calculated and methodical approach to state building. The system fed itself. Each decisive victory brought new territory and resources under his control. Those resources funded armies and administrators. He removed the old ruling families from new lands to prevent rebellions. That consolidation made it easier to enforce clear rules and consequences, which generated a stable, tax-paying population. Stability and wealth let him act even more decisively in the next campaign. It became a cycle of expansion and consolidation that seemed unstoppable. Machiavelli observed this system with great interest. He saw it not as pure evil, but as a practical way to forge a state from chaos. Power is not a static object to be held, but a dynamic process to be managed. It required constant attention, constant adjustment, and a willingness to use whatever tools were necessary to maintain order and security. The system Borgia built was impressively logical. Every part had a purpose. Every action reinforced the whole. This separates a true strategist from a mere warlord. A warlord wins battles. A strategist builds a state that can sustain itself. His methods, while harsh, aimed to create a lasting, unified political entity. He replaced a patchwork of feuding lords with a single centralized administration. He brought brutal order to a region of constant conflict. The lesson: power isn't just the strongest army, it's the most effective structure for command and control. And yet, for all its ruthless efficiency, his system of power contained critical flaws. These were not small errors in judgment, but fundamental weaknesses in the very foundation of his state. The first and most significant mistake was that his entire system was dependent on a single person, himself. All lines of authority led directly to him. The loyalty of his captains, the efficiency of his government, the fear of his enemies were all tied to him, tied to his personal skill, his reputation, his continued presence. When power is concentrated entirely in the hands of one individual, it becomes incredibly fragile. The system can function with remarkable speed and unity of purpose as long as that individual is strong. But if that leader dies, becomes ill, or is otherwise removed from the equation, the entire structure is at risk of immediate collapse. The people who follow a single person are loyal to the person, not necessarily to the system they created. Once that person is gone, their lieutenants may begin to fight amongst themselves, and their subjects may see an opportunity to break free. The structure has no independent life of its own. A system of power that rests on a single pillar is brittle. It cannot withstand a serious shock to that pillar. True, lasting stability requires the creation of institutions. It requires laws, traditions, and a distribution of power that can function even when the leader changes. It needs shared incentives that bind powerful people to the survival of the state, not just to the survival of the ruler. Personal rule, based on charisma and fear, can achieve great things in a short amount of time, but it rarely survives the person who created it. Borgia built a state for himself, not a state that could outlive him. This dependence was a ticking clock at the heart of his enterprise. Every decision he made, every enemy he crushed, every law he enacted, only served to reinforce his own central importance. He did not build a class of independent nobles who were loyal to the state of Romagna. He built a group of captains who were loyal to Duke Valentino. He did not create a system of laws that stood on its own authority. He created a system of decrees that derived their authority from his will. This made him immensely powerful in the present, but it mortgaged his entire legacy against the single, inescapable fact of his own mortality. The second great mistake was his reliance on good fortune. He was a master of seizing the moment, but many of his greatest successes depended on timing and luck. A bold and decisive act might work perfectly when your rivals are disorganized or when their patrons are distracted by a distant war. But that very same act, performed just a few months earlier or later, could lead to absolute disaster. Many triumphs in the world of power are a combination of skill and pure, dumb luck. He was a brilliant strategist, but he also benefited from a string of favorable circumstances that aligned perfectly with his ambitions. Leaders who come to depend on good fortune can become overconfident. They can start to believe that their own skill is the only factor in their success. They mistake a lucky break for a sign of their own genius. This can lead them to take risks that are not calculated, but reckless. A wise leader understands that the winds of fortune can change direction at any moment. They plan for contingencies. They build reserves of wealth. They build reserves of goodwill. They wait patiently when events are not aligned in their favor, and they act with overwhelming force only when chance is on their side. Borgia's career was marked by a series of incredibly fortunate events. His rise was enabled by a political climate in Italy that was uniquely unstable, creating a power vacuum he could fill. His campaigns were often aided by the missteps and internal conflicts of his enemies. He seemed to always be in the right place at the right time. But luck is not a strategy, it is a temporary condition. When his luck inevitably turned, as it does for all people, his system was not resilient enough to handle the shock. The same boldness that had looked like genius when things were going well suddenly looked like foolishness when they were not. He made the mistake of assuming the favorable conditions would last forever. He built his power on a foundation that included not just his skill and his father's support, but also a string of lucky breaks. When that luck ran out, the weaknesses in his system were laid bare for all to see. A truly robust system of power is one that can survive not just the attacks of its enemies, but also a period of bad fortune. It must be able to endure a failed harvest, a lost battle, or an unexpected shift in the political landscape. His system could not. It was built for fair weather, and it shattered in the storm. The third great mistake was his dependence on outside support. His power, despite apparent self-sufficiency, was built on a foundation provided by another: his father's position as pope, legitimacy, money, diplomatic muscle, the papal armies, the wealth of the church. Without that external backing, his personal ambition and strategic skill meant very little. He was operating on borrowed power. This dependence is a hidden and profound risk. When your power rests on an ally or patron, you are never truly your own master. That support can be withdrawn at any moment. They might change their mind, face political troubles, be removed from power. Then the dependent leader is exposed and vulnerable. Borgia was Duke of Romagna, fearsome and independent, but his project was underwritten by papal authority he didn't control. A wise leader builds an independent base of support. They cultivate loyalty inside their institutions. They diversify income sources. They create a self-sustaining power structure. This reduces the risk of sudden collapse. Borgia created his own armies and his own administration, but never escaped his father's shadow. His legitimacy was linked to Rome, and when that link broke, his enemies moved. This leash of dependence was the fatal flaw. When his father died, the external supports vanished overnight. Source of funds, diplomatic immunity, spiritual legitimacy. His system wasn't strong enough alone. Enemies previously checked by the Pope were now free. The structure was a magnificent house built on someone else's land. When the landowner was gone, the house was forfeit. In the end, we should not study Borgia to praise his ruthlessness or to condemn his morality. We should study him to learn, look closely at his actions and their effects, notice the cold logic that made his power work. He was decisive, he was thorough, he was clear, but also notice the fundamental flaws that caused his power to fail. His entire state rested on his own shoulders. It was buoyed by a tide of good fortune. It was anchored to an external power he could not control. When those three things changed, his world fell apart. Think of the systems of power you see today. You can see his methods everywhere. A corporate executive acts decisively to restructure a failing division, removing old managers, making the consequences of poor performance clear. A government passes strict laws to dismantle a criminal network, cutting off its resources completely. A community leader builds a predictable system where rules are known and fairly applied. These are all echoes of the Borgia method, small pieces of a larger puzzle about how to impose order and achieve a goal. Each action uses a part of his toolkit. At the same time, the most successful modern leaders and organizations instinctively understand his mistakes. They work to avoid a total dependence on a single charismatic individual. They build institutions. They write constitutions. They create corporate cultures that are designed to outlast any one person. They create clear rules for succession. They aim for a system that continues to function smoothly, even when the CEO retires or the president leaves office. This is the main lesson. This is the difference between temporary dominance and lasting power. Real power is not just about force, and it is not just about personal ambition. Real power is the ability to build a system, and that system must be strong enough to survive beyond the person who created it. It must not crumble when the leader is gone. It must balance clarity with a sense of fairness that encourages people to participate willingly, not just out of fear. It must create predictable ways for power to be transferred without descending into chaos. The person is temporary. The system is what endures. Study Borgia, then, as a crucial lesson in architecture. Learn how to build, but also learn what makes a foundation crack. Power can be sharp, and it can be fast, but it can also be fragile. The truly strong system is the one that can survive the loss of any single part, even the most important one. That is the most useful lesson of all. Power doesn't announce itself, it reveals itself. If there's a figure, a leader, or a system of power you want analyzed next, leave it in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.